we are going to be introducing to you here one of the most legendary artists of anyone's lifetime. This artist that we're about to speak to today has a Grammy Award for recording Aida with Eric Leinsdorf. She has a Kennedy Center Award for her contribution to American culture and art. This artist, most importantly, debuted at the old Metropolitan Opera House and sang at the new Metropolitan Opera House. She sung all the major roles all over the world, and we are so happy to meet today with Dr. Grace Bumbry Kemmerzingeren.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you know, and quite candidly, you only told part of my story. My debut in opera was in Paris in 1960, 5 years before the Metropolitan.
Yes, at the Paris Opera in 1960, you were probably one of the youngest people to be debuting in the dramatic repertoire.
I think so, and certainly the first Black singer. Yes, and I was quite amazed at that because I thought, you know, France is so liberated and all that sort of stuff, that they certainly would have had a Black singer before. No, I was the first one there too, in singing any role, whether it was Aida or Amneris. And I'm speaking about that because when I was negotiating for that role, the intendant, the director of the house, wanted me to sing Aida, and I insisted upon singing Amneris, which he could not understand. And I said, well, I know the first act of Amneris, and I had studied that at the Music Academy of the West in Santa Barbara, so I knew that music. And I wanted to make my debut a grand success. And I thought that would give me what I had hoped for.
This is very interesting. This is wonderful because I believe it shows very clearly that Dr. Bumbry knows what she should be singing since 1960.
Well, I kind of thought I knew, but you know, you have to grow into this thing of knowledge. Knowledge just doesn't come by reading books. Knowledge comes by experience and learning what to do and what not to do, and more what not to do in this thing of singing, because singing is the body, how you live your body. It's not just singing notes, learning how to sing certain notes. It's also in how to hear. Hearing is singing, and hearing reminds me of a lot of things that I heard as a child. I didn't pay any attention to them, I just did them. When you're listening to people who are singing on the radio or what have you, in those days it was the radio, and I would hear what they were doing, and I would just sort of mimic them. My mother, I would mimic my mother as well, and my brothers, and so I knew all of those things that they did, but there was no name for it until I heard Marian Anderson in a recital. My mother took me to see her, and my mother had said to me, she said, you know, you're going to hear Miss Anderson. She's going to sing 3 songs here, and one of them she has 3 voices that you will hear immediately. She's going to change her voice into those 3 different characters. And I was waiting for that, and sure enough, I heard the voices of the Father, the Son, and I guess it was a spirit, but it was a negative spirit, and the Earl Koenig. And then there was this other song. Both of these songs are by Schubert, as a matter of fact. And the other song was Der Tod und das Mädchen, the death and the child, the girl. There were these different voices that I could hear, and which I enjoyed emulating. And then later on, when I started really to study voice, and I could see what it meant to have that kind of voice, that kind of instrument, and the opportunity to use it, like Miss Anderson did. And she used it all the time. I had also a wide range. That's why they kept saying that you will be another Marian Anderson. I said, no. I will not be another Marian Anderson. I will not be another anything. I will be a Grace Bumbry. It was wonderful to have that opportunity. I mean, I remember hearing Aretha. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all around here because she was in the same time as I was there. I was doing opera and she was doing her pop and rock. And I remember listening to her I would take a break from my rehearsals or practice or whatever, and I'd turn on a record or I flip on the radio or something, and there she was with Respect, for instance. I loved Dionne Warwick, and I love Gladys Knight. I mean, these are all queens of that era. We should listen to all of that, and plus think about the classical music. There's more than one thing to listen to. There's more than one meal on the table.
So yes, you actually recorded a duet with Dionne Warwick. Could you tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Well, very simple. I asked her. I asked her, would she do a recording with me? And she said, well, yes. I was somewhere. I was in Germany somewhere. I was also an ambassador to UNESCO. And we were doing some concerts in Germany. And I remember there was this guy from Los Angeles who was at one of the dinners. He told me what he did. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Well, I really like pop music. And I would like one day to sing some pop music. He said, you would? And I said, yes. And one word led to the other. And before you knew it, at the end of the evening, we started talking seriously about doing a recording. And I said, well, I would like to do something with Dionne Warwick. She's really my favorite, and that's that style of music, my style of music. I said, I can't sing rock, but I can sing pop music. And because I had tried, sitting at home, listening to other singers sing. I had at that time, my favorite was Shirley Bassey. So I would imitate Shirley Bassey. And then I got from Shirley Bassey into my own style. All right, so this guy, his name was Andrew White from Los Angeles. And he and I stayed in touch. I found out that he was living in Germany. And so we kept in touch. And next thing we know, we put together a recording for Deutsche Grammophon. He knew Dionne quite well. And the next thing we know, we worked together. She was wonderful. She was helpful. She was encouraging, more than I could ask for.
Something else that you brought up in relationship to music that was outside of what you are so spectacularly known for is religious music that you came up with, the gospel music that you came up with.
Extraordinarily, our church, our Methodist church, we didn't sing gospel music except for Sunday evening services.
Okay.
Our Sunday morning services was a straight Methodist church service, very straight-laced. We sang a lot of music of the usual composers, I would say from the white genre, but we did not do the Baptist style of music. And quite candidly, I didn't realize that the difference until I formed the Grace Bumbry Black Musical Heritage Ensemble in 1996. This ensemble, we did spirituals in the first half, and in the second half, we did gospel. Now, I had to learn gospel. I didn't know gospel music. I had heard it on the radio, but I didn't pay any attention. I'm not, because it wasn't part of my church service. What I remember most vividly was that that Bach cantata. The melody was la da di da da di da 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 di da da di da da di da da di da. I remember that as well as I can see your face on the screen. And that was that was a kind of music that I learned just automatically. And then by the time I was 11, I remember that quite well because that was the year that our church choir was performing the Messiah for the first time. I was sitting back in the auditorium because I wasn't old enough to join any of the choirs. I mean, the youth choir had a limit of 13, but I was sitting behind the pianist in the rehearsal in the auditorium. And as she was teaching them the music, I pick it up. A child picks up anything very quickly. And I picked up everybody's part, everybody. When my brothers were doing their rehearsals on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon before going to church the next day, They were singing what they had to sing. And what was missing, Grace would sing. I would fill in. And they was, how do you know all that music, Grace? I said, well, I heard it. I know everybody's part. I know your part too. So, so that was how Grace got introduced to the music of the church. Now, I think the thing that interested me most at the beginning was the organ, the pipe organ, not the Hammond, the pipe organ. This huge thing with all those pipes up there. And I was just overwhelmed at the sounds that it would make. Now, let me go back a little bit before that. I guess I was about 8 or 9. And at that time, there was a conductor in St. Louis for the St. Louis Symphony. Name was Vladimir Goldschman. Now, Mr. Goldschman had also this attitude of being very forward and helpful to the young people, as did our music director of our church choir. Mrs. Ellsford was her name. She had this thing of also thinking forward, not just thinking of what's happening today. And her idea, together with the minister, the pastor of the church, who had just become the minister there, he had 3 children, like my family. There were 2 boys and a girl, and they were all singers. All of them were singers. And the 2 tenors were my favorites. One sang to the Messiah, Comfort Ye, and the other one sang, Comfort Ye, was Every Valley Shall Be Exalted. And that voice was the one that I was most enthusiastic about, because his was somehow higher than the O Comfort Ye, and somehow or another he had more melody to his voice. And I thought, how strange. They're both tenors. I wasn't verbalizing it, but I was just thinking, they both sing tenor, but the other one I like better. Why is that? Now, you would have thought I would have been more enhanced by the girl, who was a soprano. Well, I didn't really particularly like her, but I thought, well, she's okay, but I can do that better. I was only 10 years old. I can do that better. You know how children are. They can do everything better when they're young. Well, in any case, long story short, that pastor, that church, that organist, music director of the church choirs, that was the making of Grace Bumbry, because I heard the possibilities there. There was something more to singing than just rhythm and melody. And I wanted to find out what it was. Then at age 12, I graduated, went to high school. And I knew that there was this choir director named Kenneth Phillips. Kenneth Phillips was, first of all, the #1 conductor of music in the city of St. Louis, if not the whole state of Missouri. Because there were always these competitions back in those days of the choirs of the different schools. And the Sumner High School choir always got first prize. And so I wanted to join that choir because Mr. Phillips had such an enormous renommee. So I thought, well, Grace, you're really too young. He's not gonna take you. So try for the girls' glee club. I didn't do it really wholeheartedly, but that was my second choice. Well, she didn't take me. No. But Mr. Phillips was standing back listening, and when the audition was over, he came over and asked me, would I like to join his choir? I don't believe this. This is like a stroke of luck that I would never have thought of. I said, I really wanted to join your choir, but I didn't think I was really good enough. He said, no. Report to class tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So I was at his class at 9 o'clock, and that was the beginning of Grace Bumbry, because everything that I had hoped for had suddenly come. I had the opportunity that I could never have thought of, could never ever have dreamt of, because this man was really that made the difference. For a singer, for a young singer, you have to be very, very careful who you give your voice over to. And I say it in that way because it's very important. Not just have somebody teach you to sing. There are many people who can teach you to sing, but that doesn't mean they know what they're doing. teaching you to sing is a huge responsibility. And he took that responsibility very, very seriously, as did I. And my mother has told me many times, said, you know, you just used to come home from your lessons always in tears. I mean, practically always in tears. And he even talked about it. My mother talked about it and told me that it was simply so. You were so, I don't know, overly enthusiastic. You overly wanted to sing. You wanted to sing so badly. And you understood what he was saying. The words were very easy words. And you did it once, and then you expected the second time to be the same. But it doesn't work like that. You cannot copy your voice. You have to understand what you're saying, what the teacher has said, and how it goes into your brain, and then that brain goes into your throat, and how it comes out. It's like that. It's like that. I didn't know that. And I tell you, it was so frustrating. I think that's really the right word, frustration, because you understood, you did it once, and then suddenly it doesn't come again because you expected it to come because you had just done it. Well, you didn't think it again. You have to think what has been said and repeat that whole process until it's right. That's why they call that thing repetition.
Did you find in your early training, because you said you would come home afterwards so frustrated and so pent up with nerves, was part of it, you had this big dramatic voice and your body needed to mature to be able to do everything you were going to do with it? Was there some sort of development you just had to grow up to be able to use this full instrument?
No, I wasn't thinking about that.
Wow.
I was thinking about the exercises that he gave me to sing. The exercises, the vocal exercises. La 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 la. Whatever the key is, you have to sing it and with clear sound, with clear pronunciation, with clear vowels. The vowels. What's a vowel? What do you mean a vowel? A-E-I-O-U. You don't make whoa 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 whoa. And that was one thing he said to me, to us all in the class, because I sang in his choir every morning, every Monday through Friday. Every morning there was a class from 9 o'clock to 10:30.
Yes.
At Sumner High School. So that meant that I had for 4 years, a voice lesson 5 days a week, plus my voice lesson on Saturday, 6 days a week. Who ever heard of that? That doesn't happen these days. So what I was trying to say was that he gave us the basis, he gave me the basis of what I needed to do. I was lucky. I mean, really beyond luck, you cannot go. Well, God gave me that opportunity, the chance to not only have a beautiful voice and beautiful instrument, but also to be put in the hands of the right person at the right time. Because you know as well as I do that if you don't get the right teacher, your development is stunted or completely lost. I have singers today who have great voices, but because they were put into the hands of wrong people early on, those things have got to be ironed out.
Yes.
And what's in your brain, you cannot erase it.
No.
All you can do is make the correction. It can be changed. The brain will change in 21 days. You can change anything in 21 days. But who knows that? You think, oh, I learned it this way and this how it's going to be. That's not so. You have to find the teacher who knows what is good for your voice. I underline that, and continue. That's all there is to that.
So
Okay.
you would agree that there's no shortage of wonderful voices out there. There's a shortage of great teachers for those voices at times.
I'm not even so sure that there's a shortage.
Okay.
There are people who are supposed to do certain things. And sometimes we get in our way. We want it too soon. Now, you're going to say, well, yeah, you did yours at age 22 or 21 or whatever, but that's my set of situations. Everybody has his own set of situations according to what you have been born with. You know, the funny thing is when you have a success, suddenly everybody understands.
Yes,
Yeah,
of course. When they see your name in the paper, suddenly everything makes sense.
yeah, yeah. As was the case with our next door neighbors. And when I was growing up, I studied piano when I was 7. We lived then in a 4-family flat. And on our floor, on our bottom floor, there was our family, and then there was this other family on the other side. And there were the 4 boys and a girl. They, of course, with my brothers, they were always having great fun. And Grace was inside playing the piano on the piano. And they were always trying to disturb me. So at one point, I was about 10, I think. One of the boys, Albert tried to get into the side window. And I remember I had put some water on the kitchen stove, and I went into the kitchen, and it was hot by this time. The water was hot, and I took that water and I poured it on him. He didn't try that again.
Nothing's gonna get between you and your practicing.
Nope. No. Mm-mm. Even though it was only the piano, and I didn't really like the piano, but my mother had the piano there for me, and I had to practice. You can't play the piano for the church recitals until you have the music learned. She was clever. She knew that if she makes me a dress every week, a new dress, then I would practice my piano. I don't know how I got to that story.
What a wonderful story. What a wonderful story. If you'd like, we'd sort of like to transition more into the classical section of the interview and talking about some of your very famous roles.
Yeah.
Everyone knows your history and knows opera, that you are a Verdi specialist, and anyone can hear the famous Omneris recordings, your Abeli, all these lovely things. But I wanted to focus on roles that people don't always associate you with. And one of your most memorable, one of my favorites of your contributions to the art form, I am enamored with your Gioconda, and so few people know that you sing it. There are many recordings, there's a video, it's beautiful, and I would love to hear about your experience with the part, because you sang it for nearly 15 years, if not longer.
I think I first started singing Gioconda in 73 or 72, 73 or 4, something like that.
My research said New Jersey, 1974.
Yes, exactly.
You were the first Black lead in New Jersey.
But let me just tell you, I was the first Black everything. Because in those days there were no Black singers. There was Leontine Price, Shirley Verrett, and Grace Bumbry. So if I sang something, it could well have been the first Black. So, but Black in New Jersey or New York or whatever, I was the first Black Gioconda. Yes. I was the first Black Laura also. I sang Laura in San Francisco with Leila Ganger as Gioconda. That's how I first became interested in Gioconda. I had received an offer to record Gioconda Laura. And I said, after I had listened to the opera, I said, actually, no, I would rather delay that and sing at some point the role of Gioconda, which is what I did. I took on the role of Laura first, and then the role of Gioconda. I found Gioconda to be a hand-in-glove fit for me. Laura is fine. Laura is easy. It's nice singing, and she comes on and she's off. But Gioconda has a message. She has something to say. She's a so-called, in those days, a street singer. And she loved her mother, and she worshiped her mother, actually, as did I with my mother. But I think what impressed me were those little snippets. There are moments of Gioconda that you can't even use it as an aria, but it's just so haunting. The music is so haunting. the role of Gioconda is a religious woman,
Yes.
and that she had great respect for her mom and for what is correct.
Yes.
Those were the three elements that grasped me more than anything else. Well, the music grasped me first of all, and then those components. As was the case also with Norma.
Now, another question I had regarding your Gioconda, because you studied it in the 70s and sang it first in the 70s. Did you ever at all coach the part with Milanov?
That's a good question. Because, you know, we lived in the same building on 72nd Street, and I knew who she was, of course, and I spoke to her about the Gioconda because I knew everybody was talking about her high B flat pianissimo. So I said, well, I'll speak to her and see perhaps I can coach with her. So she said, oh yes, I would love to work with you. So I went down for the first lesson, and she wanted immediately to start on Suicidio. And I'm afraid I don't sing my F naturals or F sharps with a covered sound. I don't need to. Suicidio, the word is suicidio, not suicidio. So I declined. I said, I'm sorry, declined. And I said, I don't think that I would like to continue with these lessons. I have a different idea, my darling, but I've done so many of these. That might well be true, and I respect what you have done. But I'm afraid I have to think about my voice, my throat. And she said, okay, well, we parted friends, and that was that. But it was one lesson only.
There's just so few women who have been able to sing it continually. Zinka is one of the few, you're one of the few. And the fact that you lived in the same building is just so fascinating. New York's the smallest world of them all. Another question I wanted to ask specifically, because regarding Gioconda, her devotion to her mother, her moral background, was Act 4 especially poignant for you?
Yes, of course. Of course, it meant a lot to me. And plus the way that Ponchielli wrote it, it's so beautifully written. And all you can do is just apply yourself to what's on the page, what's on the printed page. You have nothing to do except to follow what the composer has written. We have the easiest job because they have already put it down for us. It's also a matter of restraining, because sometimes we let ourselves get overly emotional, which closes the throat, as is the case in Norma, at the very last page of Norma. If you are overly emotional, your voice will leave you, because if you're thinking of the emotion of that moment as you would like to do, your voice will be gone.
In regards to your Norma, this is once again a part that you sang for quite some period of time, and similar to Gioconda, you sang the mezzo part in the opera first. Was this a similar situation where studying at Algisa and hearing the Norma made you more interested in the other part? Was it similar?
Probably, because I recall having heard first the Norma recording of Maria Callas. Because she was so very famous for Norma. And at that time, there must have been the early 60s, around about mid 60s or 60 or early 70s. She was famous for that big cancellation she did in Rome. So everybody was listening to her Norma. So I listened to it, and I listened to the whole opera, not just hers. And I really very much fell in love with that music. And then I studied the life of Bellini, and found a lot of his music to be very beautiful, the most melodious singing music of all the repertoire. And so, but then I was asked to sing the role of Adalgisa. And so I accepted. And I liked it very much. I thought the music is very beautiful. But as I was learning it, I was learning also to hearing the role of Norma. And I thought, well, really, that really suits me better than Adalgisa. So I did my job for the Adalgisa, which I enjoyed very much. But I was still waiting for the rehearsals to see what the Norma was going to be doing with that music. And I think my appetite was whetted when I saw it on stage, in the rehearsal stage. That's really my music there. And unfortunately, my point of view is I didn't get a chance to sing enough of the role of Norma. If I could have done maybe another 20 or 30 performances, I would be satisfied. But I felt that, and I still feel that I haven't had the opportunity to dig my teeth into that role, because there's so much about it. In me a man, all a thing to say. That's the most beautiful moment in the opera. Then at the end of the opera, there's this moment when she sings this very high obligato. Oh padre, oh padre. That I would love to do again. And I don't think I really got a chance to sing that with anybody.
We have access to the recording of, I believe, the first time you sang it in Italy in 1977. And it's a fabulous recording. I did not know you had a high D natural, and it was one of the happiest things I ever found in my life.
You have that in there?
Yes, there's a high D natural. Yes, 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 you did, Miss Grace Bumbry. Yes, you did.
Well, I don't know. Well, in any case, I've always been very daring. That was in 1977, that's correct. And it was outdoors. It was an outdoor performance. No, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that performance, those performances.
Something I wanted to ask about your Norma, due to the time that you sang it in the mid to late 70s, early 80s. This was a time period in classical music where there were, maybe a dozen is exaggerating, but there were a lot of recordings of Norma coming out in the late 70s from a lot of different voice types, light lyric sopranos, heavier dramatic sopranos, every different option. What do you think, from your perspective, makes this role so attractive to so many different sopranos, no matter what their voice type is?
I think it's the character, the character of Norma, the woman. She with all of her frailties and all her problems, and she's still the casta diva, the casta diva. She's not casta.
No.
She may have been the diva, but she was not casta.
2 children.
But 2 children. And my question is, how was she able to hide that for all that time from her father?
I would imagine the Druids wore very loose robes. I don't think she was always in her operatic casta diva gown. I don't think she was always dressed for Act 1. I think that may have been it.
No, I agree with you. I think that's the only way. Yeah, but you still got 2 children. And whose children are those? Are they the children of Clotilde? Are they the children of whose children are those?
Something that I did want to ask, because you brought up that you sang outdoors in 1977 in Italy, and we have the lovely recording of that, and because you are a world-renowned Verdi specialist, you shared that Leonore in Trovatore was very difficult to learn, yet you sang her outside. You sang her in the park, in Central Park in New York in '82, and it's a lovely thing I wish we had recording of. Your recording of Tace la Notte is stunning. I wish we had the whole opera.
I said I found it to be a difficult opera.
Difficult opera, not a difficult role. Oh, okay. Very
Wait a minute, a difficult role, but I didn't say to learn.
Oh, okay. Difficult to perform.
Every opera has its difficulties. I found Trovatore difficult because of the manner in which it was written. There are moments of straight legato lines, then there are moments of great, huge, what do you call it, fioriture, and you have to be able to execute those fioriture. And then it happened just like that, which means you got to practice them very slowly at home. And then when it gets to the real moment, you have to have that facility, of moving the voice. And now that's when I understood what Maestro Karian meant when he says, you know, every note has its right to be sung.
Mhm.
People don't realize that every note is important. That's why the composer wrote them down there. Which brings me to the point of when I was studying for the Amneris for Paris Opera in 1960. I thought, well, I knew the first act scene with Aida and Amneris, but I didn't know the rest of the opera, which meant I had to learn 3/4 of the opera on my own. So I came to that judgment scene, and I just looked at the music. And I thought, well, that's very easy. That's not very high. It only goes to La. And yeah, there's not so much to do. So I saw all those rests. And I thought, well, what do I do with those rests? I got to do something with those rests. And what happens? What happens? Rests are there for a reason. It's not just that you don't sing. You wait to the next moment for you to sing. You have to fill in those rests with the action in your body, in your being, in your mind. What's going on? Well, okay, I realize what's happening. Radamés is being interrogated with the priests. All right, now your next interest is Numi Pietà, new God's pity. And okay, so I have to count all those beats, all those, but it's a matter of counting. But you've got those rests, those counting. That's action. That's action inside you. Inside you. What's going on out there? No, you have to think, what are they saying? What's he saying to them? What's he saying to Radamés? And then there's, you have to feel the anxiety, and you have to give that anxiety to that audience. It's not just for you. So I've got to engage my audience into the action. So I turn slowly to my audience so that they become involved with what I'm doing. Now, that was the first time that I had been aware of the rests as part of the action, a rest as part of the action. And that was a huge, huge enlightenment for me. And I think for that audience as well, because when I finished that scene, there was a thunder of like a thunderbolt of applause. I suppose they had never had that happen to them before. I suspect. Naive me, I thought that's how it's supposed to be anyway in the opera, because I had never been to an opera, you know? At that point, I had never seen an opera. So I figured, oh, but that's how they're supposed to react. And I expected that every time. I got it every time too. But it's all because of what you do.
So very exciting. So so you never saw an opera until after you had been in one as a lead.
Yes. Yes.
That might be another singular distinction on your behalf.
Yeah, I think that's it.
This is terribly exciting. You know, something that I've realized is the roles that we've covered today, talking about Gioconda, the Norma, and the Leonora as well. You've sung 2 parts in all of those operas. Did you find that already knowing one characterization in the fluid of the drama and having one characterization already settled, did that find learning another one and forming another one in that same story easier or more difficult?
No, I think it's easier for you because you have an idea of what's going to happen. I mean, I remember the Aida and the Amneris situation with that recording, how you have to picture in yourself, in your mind, where you were when you did that, when you made that movement, and how do I react now that I'm delivering this movement? It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's a big help.
Something else that we wanted to ask in terms of, again, your more recent activities, there's a lovely video on the internet of you doing a concert in Berlin singing popular music about 10 years ago. And it's so beautiful to hear you sing things that we haven't heard before. How did that concert come about? What was the impetus?
Well, I have this adopted son. His name is David Lee Brewer, and he teaches a lot of young singers pop music. And as a matter of fact, he was the first teacher for the girls of the Destiny's Child. I was at his home one day in Berlin, and he asked me, "Mommy, would you like to sing a couple of songs, pop songs?" I said, "Well, sure, I would like to, sure." So I gave it some thought, you know. And at that same time, I was being asked by the opera company in Paris. The company was Le Châtelet, if I would do a pop concert there. So I thought, well, yeah, let me put those together and see what I can come up with. So I put together about 12 or 13 songs, and three of them were the three on that you heard in the concert in Berlin, and which was for me a very interesting experiment. I enjoyed it very much. It's so interesting to hear what the voice can do when you know how to work it. And I think sometimes classical singers underestimate how to sing pop music. You cannot sing it like an opera singer. You should not sing it like an opera singer. No. It's not correct. And I was able to find that space, I think because I had that wide range by nature. I had a wide range, and I could carry my middle voice up to D and E and then down also. So I was able to make the adjustment easily, but it's not something that I would like to do every day. But I would like to do another concert like that, another one like I did in Paris, but with orchestra.
That would be very exciting. I believe, I don't have the exact year, but I did hear a recording of one of your recitals in one of your concerts in New York, where you sang Carole King at the end of the program.
Yeah.
So I think a mixture of both. Pray to God, maybe more singers will be more interested in doing both, and we'll get to have that experience. Because you don't sing it like an opera singer; you sing it just so beautifully and so authentic to its own style.
There you are, authentic to its own style. That's exactly what you should be thinking of. Not thinking of my voice. No. You have to think of the style.
Now, when we originally reached out to you, you were so gracious to accept. You shared that you had met Miss Franklin, that you had met Aretha Franklin, and I was so shocked to hear that, and I would love to hear more.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I did not know you were personal friends, and it was the happiest surprise.
Well, let me just fill you in. I think back in the 60s, or maybe early 70s, I was in St. Louis, and I was with my parents, and my nephew came over, and he said, he had a Jet magazine. He says, "Hey, Grace, do you know that Aretha Franklin is one of your fans?" And I said, "Oh, come on, how do you know that?" It says right here. So he showed me this copy of Jet magazine, where she was saying that she had been at my concert and had been a great fan of mine, and she showed how much she loved me. I thought, I can't believe that. So then later on, I think it was 76 or 77, when I was doing the Marian Anderson tribute for the Kennedy Center. And Aretha was there also for that. And I remember seeing her in the elevator, but she didn't say anything about what she was doing. She just said, we said, "Hello, and how are you?" And, you know, the usual niceties, and went on. And then I received a note from her telling me how much she enjoyed hearing me. And well, you know, this is a different world. How do I know? What does she know about me? And then I got so enthusiastic. So I think I wrote her. I must find that somewhere. I might have a copy of the letter. I don't know for sure. And then when she came to speak for me in 2009 at the Kennedy Center Honors, I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't believe that she had followed me all that time and knew me that well. So then we began our correspondence. And that's the story of our relationship.
Well, we're grateful that you were able to speak on your relationship with her and that you're able to, really cross this career over from the heights, the absolute heights of the classical world to the very heights of pop world.
Yes. And there's no difference. Stardom and greatness is just that. Doesn't matter which world you're in, you're a star. My father always says, always reach for the top. If you can't reach for the top, that's okay. The stars are right immediately below you. Yeah.
Wonderfully encouraging. Wonderful. Well, we thank you so much for spending an hour with us, Dr. Bumbry. We truly appreciate it.
I thank you for having invited me. I really enjoyed it.